What is the most bizarre reason a customer got angry with you? I was a cashier. It was an old woman. Whole Foods. Back when they had the app to scan for little to no savings. She couldn't get her app to work. I spent 5 to 10 minutes trying to help, looking at her phone, etc. She gave up and her transaction goes through. As she shouts, "I got it open." I looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, the transaction went through. I can't scan the app at this point." She gave me a dirty look, went to the front desk, told my manager I was a bimbo and walked away. It's people like her who I just think are gonna die so sad and angry. I was a department manager in a health and beauty section next to the pharmacy of a grocery store. A guy came in and asked for an antifungal called meconazole that the doctor suggested for an infection on his face. Now, as some of you may know, meconazole is very commonly used for yeast infections in the vajayjay, so it is sold by the feminine hygiene products, pads, tampons, etc. I took him over there, pointed out the meconazole an, showed him that we carry the generic store brand as a cheaper alternative. Dude was absolutely pissed off that I suggested he put pus cream on his face and demanded to speak to a manager. I told him that I was the department manager and he argued, saying there's no way a chick is in charge of men, and left. Or so I thought. Apparently, he had wandered the department and found the nearest male employee, who then brought the customer to his manager, me, when he had no idea where or what meconazole was. The customer refused again to listen to me, so I told the stoker to bring him to the pharmacist, also a woman Mayo, to discuss his needs. Next thing I heard was him screaming at the pharmacist, demanding to talk to someone who knew what they were talking about. He was asked to leave, and eventually security was called to escort him out when he continued to rant and rave about women who know nothing about his medical needs. Lol. I work in the auto industry and it's amazing how many men have told me I don't know what I'm talking about, since I'm a woman. Whenever this happens I take them to our manager, who is a woman. Always a riot. I had a guy stick to his guns about it though. He entered her office, balked briefly, then stuck out his hand and said, "Let's start by agreeing that women don't know anything about cars." Didn't go over as well as he hoped, but I commended his effort to stick with his spiel. Because I didn't open up shop an hour before opening time. Because he was here now, so opened the store. He kept banging on the door and then threw a metal bucket at my head. Good times. Let me in. Let me in. I applied another discount to the total instead of the promoted discount to save her more money. Had to get into an argument with her just to explain I'm trying to save her more money. She wasn't having it. Pay more money, I don't fucking care anymore. They noticed I had an accent. I'm from Southern Virginia and North Carolina area, and pointed it out as Russian. I don't know how they possibly thought my accent was Russian, but I corrected them, and they got angry that I was being condescending to them. The personification of a Facebook mom's group troll looking for a fight regardless of logic and sound maturity. I was working at a bank that no longer exists back in 2005 as a operations supervisor of the teller line. I was working as a teller, and it was a pretty busy day, maybe the first or third of the month, so the line was out the door with people. There was a customer who was coming up to my window, and he was very irate and frustrated with the line. Makes sense, we had all the tellers on the line, and it was still a monster. He'd probably waited like 40 minutes. I don't know, it's a blur for me, feels like 8 hours passes in a blip on those days. Anyway, he gets up to the window and he throws his checkbook at me through the little slot in a huff and tells me he wants to withdraw some money. It's at this point I should tell you that he gives me his Wells Fargo account, but we are, unfortunately, a Washington Mutual. I tell him as such, and he starts raising all hell, calling me a bimbo and catty, and that I have an attitude. Now, people get seriously mad over money, so I've experienced a lot of hostility. I felt objectively bad for the guy, but also shocked that he'd get so mad. He eventually called my manager over to complain about me. We apologized for my behavior, and he eventually left. Some people seriously lash out when they frick up. My first real job was at a Culver's, and one of the regulars would always order a mushroom and Swiss. Hold the mushroom, hold the Swiss. When I finally had a chance to take the guy's order, I straight told him that we make the burger exactly the same as the standard hamburger, Butterburger, if you're familiar with the chain. Dude flipped his lid, started raving about how he used to own his own Culvers in another city and that if they were just using regular burgers for the mushroom and Swiss, that he'd take it right up the chain and get us all fired. Edit. Lot of replies here, and I feel like I need to add that this was over 20 years ago. Maybe they did things differently then than they do now, but there was no difference in how the M&S was made compared to a regular Butterburger back then. Had an older gentleman order a food scale that was like a 10-pound capacity. The platform was a few inches wide. He received it and called me yelling, how the hell am I supposed to stand on this thing? We are a redistributor and he was also upset that we sold a product with someone else's instructions and name on it. Got yelled at for saying no problem instead of you're welcome. I've been yelled at by a grumpy old man for the same exact thing. It's a lot of old people's personal pet peeve apparently, because I've heard it too. That and not liking I'm good / you're good. I think some people see politeness as something that is only used because it is a part of prescribed etiquette and not sincere gestures of gratitude and consideration. It's the only way I can rationalize people being upset about showing consideration for others. Apparently when she said she wanted a hot fudge sundae she meant strawberry sundae. We didn't have any Bibles that were large print, pocket-sized, and contained the full text of the Bible. Now, we had large print Bibles, and we had pocket-sized Bibles, all containing the full text you'd expect. We even had a large print, pocket-sized Words of Jesus compendium. But this customer wanted a Bible that was all the words, printed larger, yet somehow smaller, when it was all put together. I tried to tell her that this was impossible, but she wasn't having it. I also had a customer that wanted a Bible that was in English, but somehow not a translation. He kept saying the original. He wanted the original Bible, but he didn't want the Old Testament Greek one we had. He wanted the original, but in English. Well, every translation in English thinks they're capturing something of the original. I said, they do all this scholarship, I don't care about scholarship. He interrupted me. I just want the original. I ended up leaving him in the King James Version section and said, let me know if there's anything else I can do, while walking away quickly enough to not hear anything back. All of this was at a regular Borders, by the way, not a Bible store. When I worked at a bookstore, people would steal the Bibles and leave behind a note that said something like profiting from the words of God is a sin, which I guess is worse than stealing. Whoa, WTF. I had my stomach lurch a few times when I opened fancy Bible boxes to find their contents missing, but I never found a sanctimonious note from a book thief. Where was your bookstore, if you don't mind my asking? I worked at a bookstore on the edge of a major metropolitan area on the East Coast, by a fancy neighborhood I'll call, Belusheville. Typical neighborhood resident was an old lady in a fur coat who wanted to find the decades out of print memoir of a once prominent playwright by asking, where are your bestsellers? I remember being screamed at every time the cigarette prices went up. How am I supposed to afford that? I don't know, sir. I'm a 15-year-old girl. Note, this was 20 years ago. I think the law has changed, but at least at the time, yes, minors were allowed to sell tobacco products. And yes, as a 15-year-old girl sometimes being yelled at did make me cry. I worked at a gas station in high school and was in charge of changing the prices on the sign outside. As I was using a 20-foot pole and suction cup and struggling to swap plastic numbers, I would get screamed at by people in their cars. Ma'am, I'm a teenager, right on set gas prices for Royal Dutch Shell, and the prices are already set on the pumps. This sign doesn't control the oil market. When I was selling Girl Scout cookies, I remember some guy being pissed that the prices had gone up. They were still only like $3. I was like, sorry, I'm 8 years old and don't control the cookie prices. Upcharging and pocketing the extra. I'm onto your little game. You have earned your embezzlement badge. Oof, yeah. My first job was at a grocery store and we sold cigarettes. Our prices were at the state minimum, so whenever the tax went up, so did the prices. Some people got so uppity at us for raising the price when it literally went up everywhere. So a few years ago I was working as a cashier, and it was my job to watch over the self-checkout machines and help anyone who was having trouble. So middle of the day I see this guy having trouble with one. He didn't understand that you need to scan the item and place it on the scale before scanning the next one. So I walk over and ask him if he needs any help. He nearly jumps out of his skin and starts yelling at me because apparently I snuck up on him. He demands to see my manager, and I'm just flabbergasted that not only would someone be so situationally unaware that they couldn't see me walking up beside them, but that they would be so angry that they would want to see my manager over it. I go and get my manager, and he comes over, and this guy says that I snuck up on him and was also very rude and laughed at him, which was bullshit, and another customer who saw the whole thing even called him out on that. Eventually the manager tells him to leave with his stuff and that he'll talk to me, and seemingly the guy was satisfied. Manager just say don't sneak up on people or anything, and I simply respond with sure and got back to work. Only time a customer ever got angry at me. I used to work at GameStop. One time this guy came in. I asked him if I could help him with anything, and he assured me he needed some time to look before I helped him. Then the phone rang with a customer who had like 10 minutes worth of questions. The other guy waited for me to get off the phone just so he could bitch that I took too long to help him, so he was taking his business elsewhere. I absolutely told him that I could not care less if he left and didn't buy anything. GameStop customers. I had one get mad at me because I had no idea what the game lineage was. He meant freaking lineage. I used to work for Best Buy and Geek Squad, but would cover PC occasionally. I had someone get mad at me because the quality of Intel chips has been steadily going down, and they wanted me to give them a discount to buy an Intel laptop. They obviously knew it was a manufacturer's thing, as they even talked to me about how Intel is pushing their resources into quantum computing and not advancing current hardware the same way. Like, I can't just call someone at Intel and tell them to change their focus. I can't give you 20% off a new laptop because you dislike AMD and the price for performance doesn't really match anymore. She claimed that I was thinking bad thoughts about her, and the resulting negative energy was making her feet bleed. I wasn't thinking bad thoughts about her before that, but I sure as shit was after. You should have run with it. You're lucky that's all I'm making bleed. He got caught having his 4 and 6-year-old nephews hide merchandise under his wheelchair for the third time. Mostly video games and controllers. He accused me of hating disabled people as he was being kicked out. I was just the cashier by the front door. Literally wasn't involved at all. Mostly video games and controllers. These are massive ticket thefts. Damn. Just 2 items can break $100. Holy fuck. Unless it was the $20 and under games they keep out of the glass, but still. So in Finland you get money for recycling bottles and cans. You get a receipt from the machine and you give it to the cashier. Then you can either take the money in cash or take it out from your purchase. One old lady went completely nuts when I asked, as we are supposed to do, if she wanted it in cash or the purchase price reduced. She almost yelled, "Why would I want it in cash? What would I do with it? Why would anyone want that?" Edit. I remembered another story. More weird Finnish ways. We are allowed to sell alcohol only from 9 AM to 9 PM. But the store opened at 8 AM and occasionally people tried to buy beer too early. Usually they just accepted their fate when I told them that I couldn't sell it yet cause the cash register wouldn't let it through before 9. But there was this one guy who got seriously mad and said that he'd then go to other store nearby. I just said okay, as I didn't get paid enough to deal with people like that. Luckily the guy next in line said you can go there, but I bet they won't sell it there either cause it's against the law. The guy left looking defeated. Sorry for bad English. I was working as an usher at my local movie theater. To take out the trash you have to go through the back party room, which is past the arcade. It was a slow weekday, so I was the only usher supervisor there. Walking back with an empty trash can, I was stopped by an older couple. They told me that the token machine for the arcade was out of order and that they wanted me to fix it. We rent out the arcade to whoever wants their games in there, so we don't own the machines. That means we have to call a guy whenever it breaks down or runs out of tokens. When I told them that, they asked for my full name and asked to see a manager. Upon seeing the manager, they told him I was rude and didn't fix the arcade machine. All of the managers know me pretty well, so he just said he would deal with me when he gets a chance and then didn't do anything. Got dirty looks from them when they left the theater. Lady walked into my office asking for one of my colleagues. I explained to her that he actually works out of a different office, which is listed in his email signature and our website. She was upset as she had documents to drop off to him. I explained to her that his office is only 3 minutes down the street if she wanted to make the drive, or I could scan her documents and email them to him. She refused. So I said, well, you can leave them here with me and I can ask the guy to come pick them up tomorrow. She again said no because she didn't trust me. I explained that I'm the director of operations for the company, basically my colleague's boss. She then yells that she doesn't know me and this is extremely sensitive information and storms out 1 minute later. She comes in and asks for my business card to prove I'm who I say I am. Lol. I give her one and she leaves her stuff with me and storms off again. Sometimes people yell that they know our company's CEOs and they'll get me fired. Things like Carmen is a good friend of mine and I'm going to have her fire you. Or I saw Mike in the warehouse and I'm going to march right up to him and tell him to fire you. The problem with this is always that A, Carmen is a guy and B, nobody ever knows where Mike is except Carmen and their assistant, and if people elsewhere in the company do know where Mike is, he's on vacation not halfway across the country fiddling with boxes point in a warehouse. My favorite was when a guy threatened to have me fired unless I reactivated his account because Carmen and I are good friends now and I'm going to have him fire you. Because I'm meeting him in his office in about 20 minutes. And he's waiting to sell me a truckload of mattresses. Okay, but A, I know Carmen threatened to sue you if you ever did business with us again, and B, Carmen's office is directly next to mine and he is not there and has no scheduled meetings today, and C, we do not have any truckloads of mattresses at the moment. Refused to sell woman a Whopper. Worked at McDonald's. I hear this one all the time. Or the other way around, Burger King refusing to sell a Big Mac. Well, if you work at a McDonald's, you'll hear it a lot. Except, they usually just say, oh well, I meant a Big Mac hatter, or yeah, that thing. And laugh it off when you tell them, sorry, did you mean a Big Mac or quarter pounder? They don't usually spend 5 minutes pitching a fit claiming that you are trying to make fun of her and cause problems. I have 2 examples. 1. I was a teller for almost 4 years when I was in college, and I remember getting yelled at and customers growing angry with me because they were low on money or had checks bounce or a plethora of other reasons due to them lacking funds. How the Sam Hillies, that my fucking fault. Also, in high school I worked at Toys R Us for a while and I caught a lady trying to shoplift. She flipped out and started calling me a racist. The GM came over and asked her to empty her bag if there was nothing to be found. Sure enough, there was a few pairs of baby shoes from the Babies R Us side of the store and a small toy. She threw the items on the ground and stormed off and intentionally knocked over one of our kiosk things. We reported it, but nothing ever happened to her. I worked at a dentistry every summer when I was in college. One summer I took over for our receptionist while she was out getting chemo. My second or third day I got a call from a woman who apparently called rather frequently, demanding to know why her daughter couldn't get free dental care. She was citing some clause about disability which was not relevant to her daughter's recently diagnosed epilepsy, and was downright furious with the whole office for having told her this before. I told her, thankfully having been made aware of this predicament beforehand, that I was sorry. I didn't know what to tell her. I was only covering for our main receptionist, and I would let the dentist know of her complaint. She thought this was even more appalling. She hung up after promising that we hadn't heard the last of her. I do feel a bit bad for her, since she must have been going through an incredibly scary time, but I was grateful all I had to do was pass on the message and be done with it. Guy was irate because I didn't get his pizza delivered in time. He yelled at me and said he didn't want it and would never order again. I got back in my car and as he stared me down from the porch I started eating his pizza. I took a couple of bites then drove off with both hands on the wheel and a piece of pie hanging out of my mouth. He was very polite when he ordered again a few days later. Working at FedEx office was always an interesting one. A woman called the store and demanded to know wire shipping and printing center charges to print stuff. It sort of caught me off guard and we were 20 minutes to closing. So I kindly explained to her that our printing is a service we provide and that we need to charge for maintenance and toner for the printers. Probably not my best way of explaining it. She then asks me, so if I want to print something from your store, I have to pay for it? I told her yes. She flipped her shit and started screaming at me through the phone. That doesn't make sense. Why the fuck do I have to pay to print something? I just told her I apologize for the inconvenience. She continues to just scream at me and eventually when she's done I just say, yeah, sorry, and she just hangs up. I wasn't even mad, just confused. I work at Subway. I put the exact sauce she requested on her sandwich. She was mad because it was the wrong one and I was supposed to read her mind I guess. I worked at a Burger King in high school. A guy comes in one day complaining he put in money to get a newspaper in the machine outside and it wasn't this Sunday's paper. He wanted a refund. I told him we didn't own that machine and we weren't able to give him his money back. I also mentioned to him it was actually Saturday, not Sunday. He flew into a rage, threw last week's Sunday edition of the paper all around the restaurant and behind the counter. My manager comes out and threatens to call the cops. Dude leaves screaming about how we ripped him off. Sometimes you can't fix stupid. Customer ordered a dish that always comes with French fries. Got mad when he got his French fries because he wanted bread. NBD, I apologized, although I did nothing wrong, and brought him some bread immediately. Problem solved you'd think, but he then started yelling at me because apparently the restaurant always serves this with bread. I should just agreed with him, but I foolishly didn't. He told me I was wrong. I told him I had worked there for 5 years already, that I knew I wasn't wrong, and I advised him to tell staff that he wanted bread when ordering next time. At this point he got red in the face and screamed that he knew better because he'd been a customer for 10 years already, which is rich since the restaurant hadn't even been open that long. Long story short, the owner came over to his table. She supported me. The guy ate his food that must have been cold by then and never came back. I'll never forget his poor wife quietly trying to calm him down and to get him to let it go. She was incredibly embarrassed, but I doubt he even noticed. Worked at Walmart and this guy went through my line buying something for his tires. He accidentally got 2 different things. One was a lot more expensive than the other. He got pissed looking at his receipt and demanded to know why one cost more money. I looked at the products and noticed one had some gel inserted in the product. I told him this and he demanded to know why this made the product more expensive. I explained to him I knew nothing about cars and was just a cashier, but he could go to customer service to exchange the more expensive product for the cheaper one. He then refused to leave my line until I lowered the price of the more expensive product. BTW, I was working the express checkout line on Friday at 5:30 and a huge line was forming behind this man-child. My manager finally got him to leave the line and go to customer service, though his son was in line behind him and apologized for his father's actions. Good son. A woman and her high school daughter walk up to me while I'm working in Bath and Body Works. Here's how the convo goes. Mom, we don't know what they are called, but you know those things you can wear around your neck and you clip keys or badges to them? Do you sell those here? Me, oh, do you mean lanyards? Mom, what did you call me? Me, nothing. You said you didn't know what those things are called. They are called lanyards. Unfortunately we do not sell them here. Maybe check Hot Topic? Mom, whatever, thanks for wasting my time. As they turned to leave, the daughter turned behind her mom's back and mouthed, "I'm sorry," to me. Poor girl, that mom was nuts. I had several people yell at me after I called them out for trying to steal shit. Even after pointing out the cameras in the store, some would guarantee I would be losing my job after they spoke with corporate. It's amazing how much power people think they have. I'm gonna complain and get exactly what I want. No, bitch, that isn't how the world works. Don't be dumb. Edit. Alright, I've gotten plenty of comments sharing how I'm wrong to say it doesn't work in their favor all the time. When angry customers are being escorted off property and claim they are going to get employees fired by complaining to corporate, they are wrong. Sure, there are some special cases which are truly terrible, but most of the time, those threats are empty. Companies don't want to pay severance and don't want to hire new lackeys. They do, however, want customers to quit their bitching, so they frequently offer discounts/coupons. This is exceptionally frustrating for us poor retail workers who got spit in the face, either literally or figuratively, both works, by shitty people who were later rewarded for their shitty behavior. I get it. I also worked over a decade in various retail and hospitality businesses. In short, yes, they have more power than they should, and yes, they have inflated egos because their previous behavior was rewarded by dumb corporations, but also no, customers do not always get what they want. They get something similar, but rarely is someone fired for doing their job, even if the customer disagrees that their job had been done well. Apparently I didn't greet her at the drive-thru with enough enthusiasm. But the real gag is it wasn't even me on the speaker, and when I corrected her she got even madder. Now, imagine being her child. Babies raising babies. I used to deliver pizza. I had someone get irate and refuse the delivery because they'd ordered it to be delivered at 7 PM and I got there at 6:55. I hope Poeple just stood there for 5 minutes refusing to hand it over till 7 exactly. They wanted a new pizza because they said the one I brought would be cold by 7 when they wanted to eat. I told them we'd have to bake a new pizza then and it'd be late. They opted for late. I ran a few more deliveries with their pizza in my back seat and went back around 7:30 with the exact same pizza but told them it was a new one. They opened it to make sure it was hot and were happy with it. Then they called to complain about the experience. Then, we had to update our order policy that if you specify a delivery time we can only guarantee a time range and not a specific minute. I worked at a wine bar for years. People would send back glasses of wine cause they said it was a bad bottle or it didn't taste fresh, which I knew was never the case cause I tasted the wine often/knew if it was freshly opened. So I'd walk it back to the bar, pour it into a fresh glass, and bring it back. They were always happy with the new glass. The most absurd one was this lady who'd come in often, extremely particular, wanting to try 3 to 4 different wines before settling on one. She says what she's looking for, and I taste her on a few glasses with no luck. Last one she tries and says she doesn't like it. I turn around, pour her a taste of the exact same wine she just had, and gave it to her, but this time she loves it lol. People are weird. Edit. Addressing some frequent questions. No, the wine wasn't corked. I would always check the wine they said they didn't like. I'm fully aware of what corked wine is, and I also checked every bottle I opened. It very well could have been aeration that changed the wine's profile in a lot of cases. I didn't mention, but rather than just switch glasses, there were times I pour a fresh glass, but from the same bottle. Same result. Also, I don't advocate anyway doing this at their place of work. I had been at that job a very long time, and I was checked out and just didn't give a shit really. You could potentially get fired for doing something like this, depending where you work, so I would advise against it. Okay guys, don't forget to hit that sub button, also ring that shiny bell, like and share too, and check out other videos in our channel.